Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and tonight on Theosophia Esoteric Studies, we have Lynne Micelli of the ARE in NYC. And as always, she has a wonderful show planned for you tonight. Hi, Lynne. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you, Hercules.
I will be here if you need me, and just holler.
Great, thank you so much. So, we're now in that season of the year where tradition holds that the veil between this world and the next is thinnest. So, I thought this would be a good time to talk about communications with our loved ones on the other side. And I'm delighted to introduce you to my guest, medium Brenda Reading. Welcome, Brenda.
Well, thank you, Lynn, for having me here tonight. I'm very excited to be on your show.
Great, I'm happy to have you here. Brenda is a psychic, a Lilydale registered medium, a medical intuitive, a Reiki master teacher, certified holistic educator, and an ordained Melchizedek minister.
Yes.
And she is the author of the book Taps on My Shoulder. She's also a teacher and lecturer on mediumship and related topics, teaching at the Lilydale Assembly and other centers. And she has a radio show, Discover Your Intuitive Self, on YouTube, where she shares tips to enhance your own special gifts, as well as real life stories, mini live readings for callers, and she sometimes has guest hosts. So Brenda.
Yes.
You're quite involved with the Lilydale Assembly, and probably some people in our audience know all about that, and for others it might be new. So can you tell us about Lilydale and what you do there?
I would love to, Lynn. Lilydale Assembly is the world's largest center for the science, philosophy, and the religion of spiritualism. We're going into our 146th year of existence, and we're located in the southwestern part of New York State, which is the opposite of where the ARE is located, and about an hour south of Buffalo, along Cassadaga Lakes. Okay, so it's a very beautiful little community. There are people that live there all year round, and there's also we call it season, where the last week of June through Labor Day, the Lilydale Assembly offers a program, and in the program there are all types of classes and lectures and events. We've had people like Neil Donald Walsh, Raymond Moody, people that come and they lecture about their various topics that they're experts in. And we also have 3 daily services where you can sit and get a message from spirit, so you can experience the proving of the continuity of life, which is what spiritualists do, which is the main tenet of spiritualism, which is that we believe that life goes on. And so that's what we do in Lilydale Assembly. And as a registered medium there, only registered mediums are allowed to do paid readings on the grounds, and only mental mediumship is allowed to be done there. So we offer these readings to the clients that come through the door, through the gate. And we also do the message work at the outdoor services as part of our service requirements, to the assembly. There's also a healing temple on the grounds. It's a beautiful building where you can come and sit, receive healing, or just experience the beautiful healing vibration in the healing temple. We have an old growth forest there, where all the trees are protected, and they lie where they fall, as long as it's not on the benches out at the old stump where we give our messages. There's gift shops and restaurants, places to eat, Sacred Grounds coffee shop. There's all kinds of things to do there in the summer season, and I'm just very fortunate and lucky to be a part of it.
But it's really it's not just a center, it's also a community, right? People live there. People live there all year long. They live in houses there. Like,
yes.
Really, I don't think there's anything else quite like it on the planet at this time in history. No.
I know it's very unique. Many of the houses in Lilydale are designated as historical sites. It's kind of like stepping back in time, you know, to the Victorian era when spiritualism was at its height. And there's just a lot of wonderful energy there. So it is unique, but people do live there all year round.
And you referred to the stump, to giving messages at the stump. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I sure can. I'll have to tell. Well, maybe I'll tell you a story about it after. But there is a large round piece of tree, an old tree that 100 years ago the kids or more, the children in the community would go there and practice giving messages. The children, and it started with the children doing it, and then the adults said, well, why don't we just also meet here? And if you Google it, you can see a picture of it, online, and it actually is an old tree that's been fortified, over the years, because it is very old. And that's where we have all the benches where people can come, a couple hundred people can fit there at any given time. And we're underneath the canopy of the trees, and we call it our cathedral in the woods.
So you've had a lot of training at Lilydale and elsewhere. Can you talk a little bit about the training that you've experienced?
Well, over the years, I've taken from many classes, mentorship under them, many different teachers, most of them actually at Lilydale. I've also John White, Judith Rochester, Janet Nahavik. I got my Reiki Master Teacher certificate from the very recently late Jan Cook. I also, though, to mention, I also took the year-long study program with Lynn Hunter through the Edgar Casey of NYC, and that was also a wonderful program. But I'd like to say that, it's years and years, and, practice and practice. It's like anything else, we keep practicing our skills, and it seems like just when you think you figured out how you're working with spirit and spirit's working with you, spirit throws you a curveball and there's something new. So it's never dull, I will tell you that.
Yeah, I wondered about that, because you were already a practicing medium, I think, when you took the course, the year-long course at ARE of New York.
Yes.
So what impelled you to take that course?
Well, this is the thing. Every teacher, right, has things that they want to share with you, and life experiences and different things. And one of my friends says, take the best and leave the rest. And so I find that when I work with different teachers, I have a more well-rounded, background. And I've known Lynn for quite some time, and I knew that she was excellent in the psychic studies, but the psychic senses are what we use as mediums. It's just a higher level of vibration that we're interacting with when we talk to the people on the other side of life. So it's always great to see a new approach, maybe a new technique. And I know that Lynn's a wonderful teacher. So yeah, that's why.
She is, yeah. Well, thank you for that testimonial to the course. So you, although you've had a lot of training, it's clear from your book that you actually had a natural gift. And you talk about, as a child, you felt like there were people in your bedroom at night. What was that like?
Well, there's a couple of things I'd like to say in regards to your comment about a natural gift. First of all, before I tell you what that was like, I believe that we're all born with natural gifts. These are all part of our own, innate structure, right? And it's actually quite scientific, and Lynn does a great job of explaining that in the course. But so I believe we all have these gifts, and you can learn them. Okay, you can learn them, and that's why I teach. But one of the reasons I wrote the book was because when you first start realizing that there are these gifts, right, and to your point, feeling the people in my bedroom when I was a child, it was scary. That's the one word answer that, only because I was young, I didn't understand And at the time, I couldn't see them, you know, with my clairvoyance. I just had this feeling that I was not alone in the room. And it's kind of silly, but I would sometimes hide my head at the bottom of the bed and put the covers, my feet up at the pillow, because I thought if somebody gets me, right? Because when you're little, somebody gets me, they're going to get my head or my feet, not my head, you know?
Right.
But, yeah. And, one of the reasons I wrote the book, and I'll just show you the book quickly, right? How to Awaken to Spirit, Taps on My Shoulder, was because depending on how you're raised and the environment that you're raised in and the belief system that you are being raised in, it can be difficult when you're having these natural experiences because you don't know who to talk to about it. And sometimes we're shut down, by the older people in the family, and they have their opinions on different things. So I wrote the book because I was hoping that other people that were having similar experiences could get some comfort in the book and also guidance, and not feel that they were alone. Because most of the time when you first start having these experiences, you're a little leery in sharing them with other people.
Yeah. Well, and that might be wise, actually, yeah. Especially when you're young and
Right.
yeah. Well, as you say, Edgar Casey says that he said in many readings, psychic is of the soul. So if you have a soul, you have psychic ability, but we haven't. But we have different degrees of it, and we've developed it to different extents. And you apparently had just came in with a highly developed gift. In the book, you talk about an incident where someone was driving you home and you heard words in your head telling you to give him the message. Now, this is before you became a medium or became an official medium.
Or knew what was happening.
Or knew what was going on. Can you tell us that story?
Sure. Well, I was working at home and I needed to have some work done on my car. And so I went to the dealership, and they had to keep my car for quite some time. And so they were going to give me a ride back to my house because I had to do some work. And that was fine, right? But then when I went to get my I'm trying to remember exactly how this went. I'm pretty sure that it was when, yes, okay, so he dropped me off. It was the first part of the trip. So anyways, I get in the car with this person, and I didn't know him. And you know how your parents are telling you, don't go into the car with someone you don't know, right? Well, this is exactly what I did. And this was a very young man, and he seemed very preoccupied with life, and he was, using his fingers to drum on the steering wheel while he was driving. The radio was up. So I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I hear the words in my ear, tell him to put his seatbelt on. And I'm like, what the heck, right? So, you're looking around like nobody's in the car with us, just the two of us, and I'm thinking, and one thing I've learned that I'm much better at now that I wasn't then was not to argue with the voice from spirit, because spirit's always right. So anyways, so I just tried to push it out of my mind, and we kept going. And there was this strange feeling in the car too at the same time. It almost felt like the life was being just sucked out of the vehicle. It was very odd. And it wasn't affecting my breathing or anything, but it just felt really strange. And so I was noticing the feeling in the vehicle. And then again, I hear the words again, tell him to put his seatbelt on. And of course, so now I argue with the voice. I'm like, no, I'm not telling him to put his seatbelt on. I'm not his mother, whatever. So he drives me into the driveway, and I said, have a good day. Yeah, see you later, right? So the next morning, my mom, who was babysitting for us, she comes into the house, and I'm getting ready, and she says, oh, did you see the article in the paper, the bad accident that happened, and I knew as soon as she said that young man was in my thoughts. and I knew it was him. And I said, did he work at the dealership in town? And it was a small little town. We didn't have hardly, like one or two at the most. She's like, yeah, he worked here, and it was the same place. And I knew it was him. And then I saw the time in the article, and it was like within a half an hour, he had gotten off his shift from working, dropping me off. And I found out he had driven into the path of a semi truck.
Oh.
Right? It was very sad. And it upset me so much because I was first of all just heartbroken for the young man, because I don't think he was even 20 years old. And then I felt this tremendous guilt, not knowing any better. I felt this guilt that, I didn't tell him, if I would have told him and listened to the message, would that have made any difference? And what it did is it made me very leery of trying to develop what was going on. I didn't want to talk about mediumship. I didn't want, I just stayed away from it because I felt like I had not done my job, And I don't know if you had gotten to the end of the book where the chapter says the rest of the story.
I haven't gotten to the end yet.
See, I don't want to tell you the rest of the story. I don't want to tell you because I want you to read it. But, for our listeners, I think I should tell them the rest of it. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
So, and it's in the book. So a few years later, and I see that there's this little class that's going to be held in a little church that is located in Cassadaga, just outside of the Lilydale Assembly grounds, right in town. And it was this Indian woman that was coming, and my husband likes Native American things, and so I know her name was something Claw or Dove, like that, white something, and she was going to talk about different things, and I thought, maybe my husband would like that. Let's go, right? So we went, and she asked a question in the middle of the program. There probably was about 25 people there in this small little church. And she asked if anyone had ever regretted, not listening to something or whatever. And I was moved in that moment to tell this story about the message, not asking the young man to put his seatbelt on, because I felt so much pain from it too. And after I told the story, this man who was sitting a few rows behind me stands up and he says, "Ma'am, I know the driver of the semi truck. There is nothing that a seatbelt would have done for that young boy." Now, Lynn, the odds that I'm getting goosebumps as I'm even talking about it with you, the odds that someone would be in that tiny little church a couple years later that had this information, right? And that I would be there and that we would both share that night, that was divinely orchestrated. And he gave me such comfort. And at that moment, I realized, what kind of ego did you have to think that you're giving a person a message? You know what I mean? This was all spirit orchestrated, and people's paths are people's paths. But what it did is it relieved me of that guilt that I had been carrying for a couple of years. And that's when I went back and started my path again.
And then you tell another incident in the book where you were giving an iridology reading for somebody. Can you tell that story, and maybe also mention what iridology is for some people out there who don't know?
Yeah. So iridology is it's the study of the iris of the eye. And 150 years ago, I think he's from Hungary. The man that developed it, he had noticed that he had befriended this owl that had broken his leg, and that as he was healing him, his actual iris of the owl's eye was changing. And so anyways, long story short, there's different markings in the iris of the eye, and depending on how deep it is, can help you with, it's not a predictive of things, because it's not a instead of medical advice or consultation, but it gives you an idea of what could be going on in the person, right? So, and each part of the iris, it corresponds to a different part of the body. It's really quite interesting. It's very similar to palmistry or reflexology, where the different places of your foot, right, correspond to different parts of the body.
Right.
So, anyways, my sister had wanted me to do an iridology reading for a friend of hers, and so I did that. And during the reading, he had wanted me to take a look at his wife's. And because we knew that she had a medical condition, it was breast cancer, but he still wanted me to do the iridology reading. And he had told me that they were all set to do a procedure, a very minor procedure for her. And so after he left, that weekend, the words, second opinion, more invasive, second opinion, it wouldn't leave me. It just kept on and kept on. So finally, I just called him up. I said, so-and-so, I said, you need to go get a second opinion, because this is what I'm hearing, right? More invasive, and they did. And it turned out that there was a second type of more invasive cancer behind the first cancer, and she needed to have a much more serious, operation, but all went well and everything. And so, like I said, I'm not a doctor, I don't diagnose, but sometimes spirit can give you very good advice.
Yeah. So that was the experience that made you decide, I really do have to develop this, I have to use this. And what was that the experience that kind of
Yeah, it was like, I knew at that point that something bigger than myself was happening, and it was time for me to finally, as you say, acquiesce and just, so I went to Lilydale looking, in search of, what is happening to me? What is, because I also had visions, I would see visions and I would hear things and know things. So it was all of these things. And I had to find out what was happening, because it wasn't going to go away. And I thought, well, maybe I could, learn to use it to help other people.
So you've made some reference in what you've been just talking about to the different psychic senses. Can you talk about those?
Oh, sure.
In addition to the five senses, five senses we we learn about in the physical world. Yeah.
Well, of course, they've given them a fancy name, they refer to them as the clairs, which is French for clear, right? So there's clairsentience, which is clear feeling or sensing. And that is one of the easiest first ones that we all kind of, have. It's like, oh, I feel this, or, and maybe you walk into a room and you can feel a difference in the vibration, of the room. And there's also clairaudience, and that's clear hearing, and that would be, hearing the voices. Clairvoyance, which is, the visions and seeing things, right? And not with your actual physical eye, but your inner eye. And then we have clair olfaction, which is smell. And sometimes, like, people will say, oh, I smell this cigarette smoke and nobody's in my house, but my aunt used to smoke. And, so that's what that is. Clairgustance, which is taste. And that's a real unique one, when you can actually get a taste of something that's not supposed to be there, that spirit puts there. And then, of course, claircognizance, which is, to me, it's one of the toughest ones to develop. It's knowing things that you have no way of knowing or prior knowledge to, like you didn't learn it, you didn't hear it from anyone, nobody taught it to you, but this thing. Mm-hmm. And one of my best friends says that, because she's claircognizant, and it's like, I don't believe me, because the information's impressed upon you and you have no, so you don't believe yourself. And that's really hard to discern that one. But those are the clairs, and we all can learn them. So.
So it seems like a lot of the training is actually paying attention. I mean, there's practice and so forth, but what you're saying is the woman who said, "I don't believe me," it's like we tend to have these feelings or intuitions, and sometimes we ignore them because we'll say, I've done this. I'll say, well, that doesn't make any sense. I don't see how that could be true. and it seems like a lot of the training involves paying attention and taking it seriously, doesn't it?
And yes, and becoming aware. And I put in the back of the book, there's exercises so that if people want to start on their own to start to, becoming more aware of their different psychic gifts and spirit senses, they can do that. But yeah, it's like, and it's also good to keep track of them because they change. It's like just when you think that, oh, I'm clairvoyant and I'm clairaudient, and then all of a sudden, like I had this happen to me, not this summer, but last summer at Lilydale. I was doing a message service and I could see this woman's husband, right? Because we determined it was her husband from the evidence. And that's one things that mediums are charged with in Lilydale, is to produce evidence of the spirit so that the sitter knows who it is. And so she knew it was her husband, but it's like, I could see him holding his hand out to her to dance. And, and I'm like, well, your husband is asking you to dance. And she says, yeah, we danced all the time. And then all of a sudden, just it came in and out my mouth so fast. I didn't even have time to think it or see it. And it was like, I'm so sorry, your husband died of a heart attack. And it was very fast. And there was nothing you could do. And I was standing there and I said these words, but I did not think of those words. You know what I mean? Like, it's like if you get a vision, you see the vision and then you talk about it. So there's thought involved, right? But these words came in and out of me so fast that there was no way for me to even think it. And she said, yeah, you're absolutely correct. So here all this time, now Spirit's given me another claircognizance, which it's like, oh my gosh, so now it's like, I'm going to have to learn how to work with that because now it just comes in and out so fast. So, yeah, it's becoming more aware, but being ready for learning something new too.
Yeah, maybe we can go back to speaking of that, to that story. You have a story in the book about the first time you gave messages at the stump. So after the iridology experience, you didn't live very far from Lilydale.
No, about 20 minutes.
Right. And you went there and started studying.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, you were asked for the first time to go and give messages at the stump.
Yeah. Are you talking about the chicken feet story?
Yeah. Yeah.
See, and that's one of my favorite stories, but this is the thing about working with spirit, Lynn, is like one of the things you have to learn to trust, and it can take a while, and that what you're experiencing through your psychic and soul gifts is real and that it's accurate, right? And so here I am, very first time at the stump, and I'm standing in front of more than 100 people, right? And I was so lucky that my first person to work with, the chairperson, was John White. And he's a legend in Lilydale, and he has since passed on. And so I started by, I had a vision of this lady, right? And she was an older woman. But when she was talking, she had a little bit of an accent, and she told me she was an abuela, all right? And that she lived on a hacienda. And then she showed me chicken feet. Now, as a medium, we're kind of like parrots. We're supposed to, take the information and repeat it and give it to the person because A, it's not our information. B, we're talking to people we don't know, two people we don't know. So for us to try to interpret the information as mediums, right? Because it could mean anything. So at first I was going, I was doing this message spirit-centered. Okay, so there's two ways to give messages in a public demonstration. One is spirit-centered, where you get the spirit first, and then you give the information out to the group, and then you ask the group people to, raise their hand if they can understand most of the information. And then you have to figure out what person it's for. Or there's going direct, where you feel drawn to a certain person or area, and then you ask if you can go to that person, and then you develop the link and you give the message. Well, I was doing spirit-centered, so I got this abuela, right, grandmother, and and so I gave that out. Well, nobody would take the information, so you can imagine my horror, first time giving a message, and I have a spirit with no one that wants to accept them. So in my training said, okay, we'll just leave her here for a minute and ask the spirit to hang on. And then I brought in another spirit, and that went just fine. But here I am, I'm done with that other message, and I still have this lady with the chicken feet. So I'm thinking, I've got to say chicken feet to these people. It must sound, preposterous, right? So a lady in the front, I said, well, and her name was Sally, she said, the spirit. So finally, a lady in the front, she's like this, raising her hand, and she goes, I think that's for me. I said, you do? She goes, yeah, my grandmother, Sally, lived down in Puerto Rico, and she used chicken feet for her voodoo. So I'm like, I think this is for you, but it was, the point of the story is that it was a little intimidating having to give evidence about chicken feet, because it just sounded so crazy, right? But it was exactly what she needed to identify her grandmother. So I know, still silly story, huh?
No, it's not silly. It's a little bit funny, but it makes sense. I mean, that you have that, what comes into your mind might not make any sense to you, and you might feel strange about saying it, but then
yes,
it's what you have to say for the person to recognize.
That's right.
You said something earlier that I wanted to ask about. You said that at Lilydale, they only do mental mediumship.
Mm-hmm.
So there's also physical mediumship.
Right.
And can you talk about what those are and what the difference is?
I will tell you, Lynn, I know very little about physical mediumship, because I've been putting all of my studies into mental mediumship, which is connection with, your senses and things. The physical mediumship is I'm aware of transfiguration, which is where the ectoplasm actually is formed from the various energies, right? And it can make the appearance of the person's face look like the actual spirit's face. I haven't actually experienced that or witnessed it, okay? They don't do that in Lilydale unless it's a special event or a class, all right? They have to have permission to do those type of things. And then also there is physical mediumship, where as the medium, you allow the spirit to pretty much take control of your vocal cords, and the sound of your voice can change, right? And things like that. I have witnessed that happening with a very good friend of mine who was a registered medium there, who has passed. Her name was Sharon Hill. And you could actually hear the sound of her voice change a little bit, like when she was giving the message, and come to find out it would sound a lot like the person. But that doesn't happen. It would happen just because it was part of the process. It wouldn't be like, and then there's like cabinets, and seances and things like that. Like I said, they do those for special events that would have to be approved by the board.
That's interesting. You talk quite a bit about your mother's passing, and I guess your family was sort of skeptical about what you were doing when you started.
That's a good word. Put it mildly.
Well, did you encounter a lot of resistance at home?
Oh, yes. But when I found out why years later, right? Because I had found out, well, the resistance was, when you tell your parents that, you know something or you're seeing something or whatever, and the first response, oh, no, that's not real. And no, oh, I was raised Catholic. So it was like, no, we don't do that kind of stuff, honey. We're not, this is not, we're not doing that and this and that. So it's kind of like it's not like I wasn't doing anything. It was just happening, right? And it's not like it's a spell, it's mediums are not witches, we don't walk around and put spells on people. And anyways, so there was that. And then I found out years later that both my mother and my grandmother, her mother, were intuitive and had experiences. And what they were concerned, and worried for me and didn't want things to, get out of hand. So that was part of the reason. But yeah, my mom, I still have a very close connection with my mom. And her passing, as it is with everyone, was someone that they love dearly, was particularly hard. Would you want me to talk about the one experience I had?
Well, maybe some of the ways that she made her presence known.
Oh my gosh. She, well, the first time that she came through, I'd actually had been complaining about my dad because we had been caring for my father. And unfortunately, he had developed some dementia, some type of neurological thing where which I called him old dad, my old dad, who was always a happy-go-lucky, pretty happy guy, was now very, very unhappy and very ornery and using swear words at me and things like that. The typical things that happen when the patient has those unfortunate illnesses. But I had kind of run out of my patience with him one day, and I was in the house and I was complaining to my husband about my dad, I might have even called him a name or something. And it was like months of, constant, he'd call me up and leave me messages and stuff. And I can laugh about it now, but at the time I would leave crying, So anyways, I was walking up my stairs at the house and I had just said something about my dad. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, in my mother's voice, I hear, "That's your father." Like she's like yelling at me, like, what do you think you're doing talking about your dad like that? And I was so shocked, but happy at the same time. I'm like, Mom? I mean, I couldn't believe it because it had been a few months, and I was waiting for her. And the feeling, she was so close to me that I could feel her presence, that she was so close. She was actually making it tough for me to navigate. And, I bumped into a couple walls and stuff, trying to sit down. And I just had to ask her, Mom, you just have to step back just a little bit, right? Because I think she was happy to see me and I was happy to feel her. And we were just all so close. But yeah, our spirit loved ones, they can use all kinds of things to try to talk to us, or to let us know they're around. We call them signs and symbols, right? And she would do all types of things to let me know she was around. Whether it was a favorite song by Elvis, her favorite, right, coming on the radio, or there was one time we called her Bama. Okay, the kids called her Bama. And I have some pictures in the book too, because I noticed that things were happening. So I would, take quick pictures of things because I noticed that there were a lot of times that she was doing things. And my son had his infant daughter on his lap, and she was about 1 year old. And she had grabbed the clicker out of his hand, and somehow she put a program on and it said Bama right on the person's. And we had just been talking about her in the kitchen.
She turned the TV on, or she changed the
my granddaughter, she did something to the TV, and here was this big sign that said Bama right on the TV, because we had just been talking about my mother in the kitchen, and it was like what, and my son's like, come look at this, Mom, you're not going to believe it. And my son is a real good skeptic of everything, right? So for him to be all excited about it, and yeah, there's too many to mention here of the things that my mom did, but one, we were talking, but the year of the first birthday without them, the first Christmas without them, all that, it's really tough. And we had our first Christmas without my mom, so to speak. And we were sitting in our dining room. And back then, you had those phones that they had batteries in them, so you could take them in the other room or whatever. But we only had one. Okay. We didn't have one upstairs. We only had the one. And we had just gotten done talking about my mom again, like how much we missed her at Christmas, and the phone rings in the kitchen. So I get up to go into the kitchen to answer the phone, and I answer the phone, and there's just static on the other end. There's nobody there, right?
Mhm.
And then I look down at the receiver because it tells you who's calling you. It was me. It was my phone number. I was calling myself, right? And I knew because you get this feeling, you get this confirmation feeling. It was my mom. She was like, hey, I didn't miss Christmas. I'm still here. Because my own number, you can't, and I hung up the phone and I tried to call myself. You can't call yourself. It was like, this is crazy. So yeah, so there's quite a few examples in the book in great detail of how she made herself. Lately, if she shows up, it's because I haven't made a good decision about something, and she's letting me know, like you're doing too much. You need to slow down. That comes in a lot when my medium friends, connect with my mom. And it's like, that's one of the first things that she usually is telling me about, is I need to take better care of myself. But yeah.
There were also, I know there were many incidents in the book, so we can't go over all of them, but the casino experiences were.
You had to bring that one up, right? You got to talk about that.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
It's a great story.
I would. You mean the casino experience where we took her to the casino? That one? Oh my gosh, I know. I hope I don't get in trouble for this. And yeah, because my mom had donated her body to science, and so they actually mailed her back to me in a box, right?
Ashes.
And I know, ashes, yep. And so it was my parents had the same birthday week. My mom's was November 9th, which is coming up shortly. And then my dad's was the 13th. So they used to like to go to the casino together. So we'd go for their birthdays. And this was the first birthday, right, that mom wouldn't be there with dad. And so my sister had gotten my dad, and I thought to myself, well, you know what? I have this big Vera Bradley tote, and I put mom's can in the tote, and I thought, I'm going to take her with me, right? And so I walked into the front door, and my sister had already talked to the security guard, right? And she says, oh, your whole family's here. And I put my hand on my bag. I go, you have no idea, right? And of course it was zipped, so you couldn't see what was in there. And so my dad was very happy. And so the four of us sat at a bank of machines, right? Me, my dad, my Vera Bradley tote with my mom inside, and then my sister. And that's where we sat for a while. So it's kind of crazy. I know people are going to think I'm a little weird, but my dad was very happy.
And a couple of times at the casino, you would play a game that was supposed to be for your mom, and win.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. She used to like these ones with the pelicans on it. and it happened to be my birthday too. So, you know, I was feeling, it was the first, you know, I'm feeling down, and my husband's like, oh, let's just go to the casino. Maybe your mom will be there, you know? And I'm like, yeah, okay. So we went, and I wanted to play that Pelican game because that's what she liked to play. And gosh darn it, did I win? I won a couple $100 on that thing. And it was like, wow. And then what made it even more weird is that a neighbor that I hadn't seen that used to live next to me, that was like 20 years before that, he's sitting down there too next to me, and I'm, oh, hey, how are you? You know, but all kinds of coincidences and synchronicities happening with loved ones. And it's not just me. It seems to me that when people read my book and then they reach out, they like to share the things in their life that are similar, you know, the things that have happened to them. And then I, you know, we talk about it, and I just always say, and I say this to my clients too, it's like our loved ones are still involved in our lives. They know what's going on. They still love us. They still want to help. And for me, that is so comforting, knowing that that is waiting there for us as well. And, you know, why would you want to live your life any other way, Lynn? You know?
Yeah. So you do a presentation at Lilydale and maybe elsewhere on empathy and being an empath. And let me see, I think I have the actual words here. Yeah. Have you been told you are too sensitive? Do you feel upset or anxious and you don't know why? You may be an empath. Discover how to better maneuver through life and embrace your gift. So that's the little blurb about the topic.
Mhm.
Can you share some of that with us, because that might be helpful to some of us.
Oh, sure. Well, I too, as a child, was told that I was too sensitive and I needed to get a thicker skin because, you know, things would bother me and upset me. But as I got older and I learned more about it, and before I get into a lot of this explanation, I will tell you, I recommend a certain book to a lot of my clients that I feel could be helped by it. And it's called The Empath Survival Guide by Dr. Judith Orloff. And you can get that on Amazon or Barnes and Noble as well. But what it is many of us that are psychics and mediums, okay, our senses, the clairs, right? Our senses, our physical senses, are heightened, okay? And so I learned for myself, like, it wasn't so much the words that people were saying to me, it was the emotions behind the words, okay? And so I was sensitive to the emotions, and we know that words and thoughts are powerful. They have vibration, right? And it's like I was sensitive to that. So people yelling, or, you know, the emotion behind that would bother me. If you are sensitive to noise or sensitive to the environment that you're in, it could be the lighting, it could be the people, the surroundings, it could be the electromagnetic fields, right, from the different things that are going on. People that are, you know, very sensitive to medications, you know, or foods, you know, they're finding that it's just that our senses are heightened. All right, so it doesn't take as much for there to be some type of a reaction to things. And so you know, if you have one of these symptoms, for lack of a better word, okay, because it's not a disease, you could be empathic, which just means that you're sensitive, right? And it's how you're wired. It's how you're put together, right? It's not something that you that you're purposely doing, right? And so I feel that the children that have been born in the last, you know, 20, 30 years, and now they're coming in even more sensitive, right? and learning and realizing that you could be sensitive to your environment or, you know, emotions or the whole thing, right? The list of things we just talked about, learning that. And then the next step, being able to discern what is your feelings and what could be other, right? Because some people actually feel other people's emotions, you know, and they have an anxiety and they're not real, they don't know why they're so upset. This is an example, okay? Like all of a sudden you're going through your day, right? You're having a great day, and all of a sudden you have all this anxiety and you don't know why. Why am I so upset? Well, you know, learning that if you're empathic, if you know you're empathic, then you can discern, okay, has anything in my world made me upset? No, you know, I'm fine. So what's going on somewhere else, right? And then you might find out that something happened in the world, because, you know, people like myself, I get, you know how animals get all nervous, Jervis, if there's a tornado coming or an earthquake, that happens to me, or an earthquake, okay? So it's like, I know I have the sense before something happens. So learning that that's not my own stuff. It's, you know, and how to maybe like deal with it, or, you know, put a shield around yourself, a bubble of you know, loving light, or just knowing that it's not my stuff and, you know, letting it go. It has to do with taking care of your own health, because, you know, our nervous system as sensitives is easier to be affected. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So your technique is one, to be aware that it's not really you, it's coming from somewhere else, and then to use some kind of a shielding
Yeah, yeah. Or a lot, you know, meditation is so wonderful for so many things. So it's like, before, like for instance, there's certain department stores that I know when I go in them, it bothers me, okay? Makes me feel a little on edge, right? So before I go in, you know, I take some deep breaths, and then I envision this like pink bubble around myself. I know, sounds crazy, right? But it works. And then I go in. And then also, if you know you've been someplace where, or around a negative person, you know, that too. I mean, that negativity constantly being bombarded at you, it can affect you if you're a sensitive person. That's, I mean, so that I know that when my mother was going through stuff, her doctor told her not to watch the TV because she was, you know, so sensitive, like, but he didn't know that she was intuitive sensitive. Do you understand?
Mhm.
So, I mean, and then of course he gave her all these drugs, you know what I mean? The Librex, the Valium, all that stuff back in those days, right? Because the women were all like, maybe they were just sensitive and they needed to learn how to, you know, deal with their own body. I don't know, but so yeah, so that's what I do. I try to make sure it's like, why am I upset? And usually I get on my text and I text all my kids, is everybody okay? You know, and then I find out, well, you know, I was upset or this happened. And like, I have this same link with my husband. He can be 500 miles away. If he's all upset and mad about something, my hands will get all hot and I know it's him. So it's like with people that we're close to, right? Especially we can get these anxious moments. So discernment is a big key for me.
What do you think it is in the department store? Is it the lighting, or is it the crowds of people, or what do you think it is?
For me, I know one thing is the lighting in there bothers me.
Yeah.
So I think it's the fluorescent stuff.
Yeah.
And also just some of the people, you know what I mean? There's just so I don't do well in crowds of people, because now that I'm so heightened, it's like, and even like my hearing, after doing readings all summer long, you know, like with all those clients and everything, because I'm listening so intently, right? My
Mhm.
hearing is so heightened that like just the regular TV will bother me. So Yeah.
You also work as a medical intuitive, and do you end up feeling the things that your clients are feeling in your body, or I hope not?
Well, first of all, I have to have a disclaimer here. I'm not allowed to do medical intuitive in Lilydale, so I don't there. I either do it in an office up here in Buffalo where I live, or on Zoom or something like that. But that process, it's like I go through the body and I feel their body, okay? And I feel, so I'm not feeling my body, I'm feeling their stuff, if that makes sense, okay? So but and in doing mediumship, I mean, you can feel like if I feel how someone passed or whatever, you know, I do feel it in my body. But one of the things I've learned over years of training, when I first started doing mediumship like that, it could be quite emotional and quite painful because you're feeling all this stuff. And I learned, what I did is, you have control. And I asked my spirit people, I said, I don't want to feel so much anymore, because it was affecting me how I was, you know, like I would be almost crying with my clients because of all the sadness. I said, just tell me how they passed. Just tell me this. And so it made it easier for me to do my work. But yeah, when I do the medical intuitive, I'm actually doing a scan in their body and feeling their body.
It's great that you can actually ask your guides to you know, give you the information in a different way. I
Yes.
didn't realize that was possible. We kind of need to wind down now. So you do a radio program. Do you want to tell people about that and how they can listen in?
It's Lilydale Radio, and it's Discover Your Spirit. So it's changed a little bit since when I published my book, and it's every 2 weeks on a Thursday night. I just did one October 24th at 7:00. You can listen in on Lilydale Assembly's Facebook page, their YouTube page, my YouTube and Facebook, which is Brenda Reading, spiritual medium teacher. All right. And and I usually try to upload them to my YouTube channel so that people can look at them later. And on my YouTube channel, there's also some different meditations that I've written and recorded so people can practice. But yes, on my radio show, Discover Your Spirit, we talk about all different, you know, topics, mediumship. This last week, we had I had a guest on, Irma K. Sawyer, who does spiritual weather work, where she has, you know, thousands of people that they focus their intent and their healing on weather occurrences like the hurricanes we just had, things like that. So it was very interesting. Yeah, so that's, and I do spot readings too on there.
And can you again give contact information? How, if people want to reach you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Well, I have a website. It's www.brendareading, READING, and yes, that's my real name. I know, isn't that funny? BrendaReading.com. I'm also on the psychic portal for the Edgar Cayce Center of NYC, so you can contact me through there. And I have a Facebook page, Brenda Reading, spiritual medium and teacher, and the YouTube. So you can find, and you can Google me too. You can just Google Brenda Reading medium and it should probably come up. But,
And the website of the ARE of New York, where Brenda is listed as a reader as well as other people, is www.edgarcaycenyc.org. But I'm going to spell that because many people don't know how to spell Cayce. So it's www.edgarcaycenyc.org. And I can be reached at info@edgarcaycenyc.org. Again, it's info@edgarcaycenyc.org. So, Brenda, this has been fun, very interesting. very interesting talking to you, and I'm really glad that you were able to join me tonight. There is that kind of Halloweeny feeling in the air, but you're so down to earth about it. It's not like you're not putting on medium airs.
No, it's a very natural thing. We all have the gifts. We can develop them, and we all have spirit loved ones. So
thank you so much for sharing with us tonight, and it's really been fun talking to you.
thank you so much, Lynn, for having me.
And thank you both for a wonderful show. I enjoyed it very much, and it brought me back to days of deep trance mediumship in the 70s in the city. So thank you so very much for that. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.